welcome back to Current Kitchen. We got to play with a little bit of mushrooms in the first segment. Now we're going into entree. We're going to do some local pork. We got a beautiful rack that we picked up at the market, and we're going to make a few chops out of this. And so the idea is that we're going to do a pork chop with beautiful Swiss chard and a little bit of a ginger orange butter sauce. So if you have two nicely chops, I'm going to put this to the side for a second. We're going to get the skillet going right here. This is a quick dish that really they take very little to prepare. So what we're going to do is we're going to season with a little bit of salt and pepper while the skillet is heating up. A little bit of salt and pepper. We're going to add a little bit of oil to our skillet. Kind of a medium to medium high heat. It's important that we get a nice sear in the pork chop so we can seal in the pores in the meat to keep those nice juices in. So you're going to hear them sizzle, which means the pan is nice and hot. Picked up some beautiful Swiss chard. What we're going to do is going to saute a little bit of shallots and mix it in with the Swiss chard to make a nice base for your pork chop. And to finish it all off, we're going to make the ginger butter sauce using fresh ginger and a little bit of orange juice and some butter in the end, little salt and pepper to finish it off. So we have our Swiss chard. We're going to cut our shallots up, get them ready. Keep an eye on our pork chop. Get that nice sear on it. And you can choose to finish this in the pan, or you can stick it in a hot oven at 375. Finish it for about 12-15 minutes. You'll get a nice medium well pork chop, which pork is nice to keep a little bit under well done because it keeps those juices, keeps it tender, and keeps it really moist to eat. So we got a nice golden sear on it. We're actually going to go ahead and stick this in a nice hot oven. Let it finish while we get the sides ready for the rest of the dish. So we'll get two pots going. One for our ginger butter. So we're going to put these on medium. We're going to add a little bit of olive oil again to both. One is for our Swiss chard, so we're going to saute our shallots for a little bit in here. While that's warming up, we're going to actually do our ginger. And ginger, we're going to go ahead and cut the outer skin off. And basically, we're just going to fine dice the ginger. It's pretty coarse, so once we get it fine dice, get it sauteed a little bit, it'll tender up and we can actually leave it in the sauce. So little fine slices. Could also actually grate it on a grater if you prefer. So little fine dice. We're going to add this to the other skillet to also saute a little bit. Got our shallots going here. We have our nice ginger, just slightly sauteing, bringing out the flavor of this. So while that's simmering, we just want to soften up the onions, the shallots, just for a little bit, get that sweetness out of there before we actually add our Swiss chard. So turn your pan down to about medium heat. There we go. Check on our pork chops. Nice and sizzling in there. There we go. And then we're going to add our Swiss chard to gently soften in the pot with the shallots. Adding just a little bit of fresh pepper. A little fresh pepper. A little bit of salt. A little bit of salt. And a little bit of liquid to reduce along with the citrus. We're going to slice our orange in half. Squeeze it in with the ginger. So we got a nice orange ginger reduction. And we're just going to let it simmer. Once it's simmered to about half, we're actually going to add the butter. And again, it's the same technique. We're going to add the butter. We're going to kind of cook right under a boil just to get the nice creaminess out of the butter. And the Swiss chard, we just want to kind of gently toss it in the hot oil and then basically turn it off, because I still would like to keep some of that texture in the Swiss chard. So basically turn your skillet off. Let it just sit and rest for a minute while we're finishing up the sauce. And the sauce is almost reduced to about half, to the point where we want to add butter. Just about reduced. We'll check on our pork chops real quick. They're about ready. So we can go ahead and add our butter to our sauce. Stirring up, turning your heat down just a little bit so it's a little bit easier to control the heat on the pot, and making sure it doesn't get to a boil. Again, the Swiss chard is just simply sitting here. The heat is off. It's just resting till it gets ready to use. And as far as the sauce, the butter is almost there. You're going to add a little bit of salt and pepper to this as well. Little bit of salt and pepper. And as an added little secret, we can add a little bit of rosemary if your preference is that right here. So we pull out our pork chops. Pork chops are ready to go. It's always a great thing to, after you cook meat, pull it. You want to let it sit and rest for a little bit, because what's happening as you cook it, it actually presses the juices inside the meat, leaving the outside a little bit dry. But if you just let it rest for a few minutes, it will actually let those juices come back out into the meat. So we're going to go ahead and place our Swiss chard. Make that our base, kind of acting like a start, even though it's a vegetable. Placing our pork chop right on top. And ready to ladle a little bit of butter sauce on top. And the ginger has been cooked, so it's nice and tender. For the entree today, seared pork, a little bit of Swiss chard, orange ginger butter. Enjoy.